p.m. on the nose, so welcome everyone to the first night of the Board of Selectmen's budget hearing. Welcome to members of the Budget Committee that are here tonight. We're glad to see your faces. I think I heard Kayla say this, but I'll just, at the risk of repeating myself, this is for the board to hear the initial requests of the various committee, department, commission heads, requests for this next fiscal year. David Kinney is largely going to be refereeing this show, so if there are no immediate questions from the group, maybe we have some new budget numbers, and would it be okay if we took
I would
a moment
definitely
to introduce ourselves? Jordan, do you mind starting
Sure.
off? We'll
Jordan
go around.
Parker, member of the Select Board.
Karen Lake, Vice Chair, Select Board.
Lee Dunn, Chair.
Mike Ray, Select Board.
Josh Garrettson, Select Board.
Excellent. Lori Knight on the Budget Committee.
Gerald Knight on the Budget Committee.
Dottie Linfield on the Budget Committee.
Stephen Hands, Budget Committee.
Dave Kinney, Town Administrator.
Kayla Lacombe, Finance Director.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here, and without further ado, I think we'll get going.
Thank you all for coming for another year, starting off. The first thing I want to do, and we'll try to do on every night, particularly once we get a little bit further along, is make sure that everybody's working from the same page, so to speak. So you all should have received a notebook. There is a copy online, somebody, if you want one electronically. In the lower left-hand corner of the pages, when we actually get into it, it'll have a date. This one says draft of February 15th, I think, yeah, 2022. The next that the Budget Committee will probably see will be after the Selectmen make their recommendations, and that draft will then change to Board of Selectmen recommended on and include a date. Inside your notebooks, in the inside pocket is a tentative schedule, as best we know it, for tonight and tomorrow night. The times are approximate. We never seem to know exactly what's going to be the big talking item besides me on the list. So that's the order we'll go through. It is, my preference would be that the budget get presented kind of in the order that it's in the notebook. That won't be the case this year because we're trying to spread out people so they're not queued up out here, trying to minimize as much potential contact as we possibly can. So we'll be doing a little bit of jumping around, and we'll always make sure we're on the same page before we actually get going. If somebody ever has a question, problem, don't know where we are, just speak up, because we don't want you lost any more than you might be already. Couple of things that well, I'll talk, I guess I'll jump right into the budget message, and then we'll look at how the budget's actually laid out. This year, like all years, we have more requests than we may want to fund. So remember, this is a draft. It also includes, this year, which is something a little bit different than previous years, the town will be the recipient of roughly $250,000 in American Rescue Plan Act monies. We've received the first $117,000 and some change directly from the state of Maine, which is a flow through from the federal government. We've also received $20,000 from Waldo County. Next year, we should be receiving another $117,000 of federal monies that'll flow through the state to us. Those monies come with all sorts of strings attached, as you can imagine. The Board of Selectmen have approved or had authorized me to sign on behalf of the town grant assurances that says we'll expend those monies per the rules. We have reporting requirements that go with that, and they final rule for that was just issued, here a couple weeks ago. We've been operating under the interim rules, up until that point. There are certainly greater flexibilities in the final rules than what was available in the interim rules. We've received some requests that we'll highlight as we go through the budget of things that potentially qualify. We'll want them double, triple sure before they expend any of those monies. And we'll just flag those out for you as we go. They obviously can be, if they are eligible for American Rescue Plan Act monies, they would also be eligible for if the town wanted to do them with town monies. So that's out there and available. Couple of items, I'm not gonna bother to read this budget message to you. Some bigger ticket items, or new items. The selectmen have included a firefighter accident insurance coverage that we'll talk about a little later under firefighters or fire department. We're in the process of trying to negotiate our regional EMS contract. EMS has been highlighted in the news a lot around the state, so there are changes coming in that. I don't know where that's going to be. Obviously, if I did, I'd plug in the number. I've included a 25% increase in that. I don't know how relevant that will be by the time we end up with the selectmen's recommendations that are required to be done but in March. We hope to have something a little firmer than my best guesstimate at this point. Hopefully the number will be lower, but anybody knows at this point. We'll talk about this tomorrow night, but there's a substantial increase proposed in our highways and bridges. We have a ongoing maintenance plan for road resurfacing, not constructing new roads, but resurfacing and keeping our good roads good while we try to get caught up on some of our others. Paving prices will undoubtedly be up in the coming year. We're also looking at doing a greater length in this coming year than we've done in the past couple of years, just because of the proximity of the roads, and we'll talk about those again tomorrow evening. The Comprehensive Plan Review Committee has been reactivated this year. They've made quite a substantial request for assistance in writing the plan. Susan Silverio, who is the chair, will be here tonight, but that's a new and different cost to us that people haven't seen for years. The Historical Society's made a request, and you'll talk to Diane later tonight. They're in the process of renovating the former LIA building, the Beach Road, and they'd like the town to contribute some to that building effort. We also have a request that came in under American Rescue Plan Act for affordable housing. That Susan Silverio is kind of shepherding along. It's part of the comprehensive plan. She's going to talk a little bit about that later tonight, but that's new and different. We are about to enter into everyone's favorite season in Lincolnville, short of black fly season, which is mud season. The Board of Selectmen have been the recipients of some concerns expressed by those that live on some of our gravel roads about the condition of those roads. There is a request to fund some survey and design services for a gravel road within the budget. We also have a substantial request for revaluation. We last did a revaluation in 2007, property revaluation. And we're looking to potentially implement the revaluation in 2025. So it'll be a couple-year process with a couple years worth of requests coming. The other parts of that, like all of us, our infrastructure is aging as well. We're looking at some requests to redo some wiring at the town pier, potentially replace the roof on the bandstand, and do some improvements to the parking area at Breezemere Park. And lastly, on some of the bigger, there's a lot of big ticket items in the budget, but things that are new and different. This year will be the first year that we'll make our first year of 10 that the town will make payments to the Lincolnville Sewer District. The voters in 2018 agreed to pay the district $190,000 over a 10-year period. And they've completed their project, provided us their debt service schedule, so our agreement has us paying the first of those $19,000 payments this year. We're not looking at doing any staffing changes, pretty much status quo with that. The current year we're in, you may recall last year we did add a position for the public facilities director. David, the other David, will join us tomorrow night. He's had a whole, 3 or 4 weeks under his belt now, so he'll be well schooled in everything that he needs to know about the town, be able to tell you everything. And I'm being a little facetious there, but we'll get through it with him and with me talking too much. Wages, the first adjustment to the wage scale is proposed in the budget. We've carried a 5.9% adjustment to the wages to mirror over the adjustment that was provided to Social Security recipients in January. You've probably all seen on the news various reports of inflation and changes. So that was a starting point for discussions with the Board of Selectmen as we move forward and what they choose to do or recommend. The town charter also requires that we, in the budget message, put forth our current debt position. At the start of the upcoming fiscal year, the town will be about $1.44 million in principal and just under $60,000 in interest costs before those are paid off. Total debt service then is just over $1.5 million. The debt that remains for the town are the school debt for the construction of the Lincolnville Central School that will be retired in 2025, and our road bond that the town took out in 2008 when we reconstructed some roads will be paid off in the next fiscal year. And we have a guesstimate at increase in building values of $2 million in taxable value. That is an educated guess on behalf of the assessor. He hasn't been out and done any inspections. Inspections it's what's been done by April 1st of this year we're in now, since April 1st of last year. So it's just an estimate of where we stand. So we're gonna turn the page, get ourselves onto, I'm not gonna bother to explain the table of contents nor the budget summary and comparison. I will say I do like to talk a lot, so if somebody has some questions as we go, shout out. I'm gonna stop quickly on page 3 for the benefit of anybody that hasn't participated in this before. This is how all our budgets are set up, and the subsequent pages after. Just working across, we use the transfer station for an example. The upper left-hand corner will tell you what category we're in, whether it be a public works or administration and finance. And then working from left to right across the page is our account, what we actually spent in fiscal year 21. For anybody that's not a fiscal year guru, it took me a while to beat this into my mind. The fiscal year that's listed, when it says fiscal year 21, that means the year that ended in 2021. So in our case, our budget year ends in June. So June 30th, 2021. So that first column is what we expended for that project, or that title, or that line, in this case, Midco Solid Waste Corporation, from July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. And then working across the page is the budget for FY22, which is in the year we're in now, that will end in June. What we expended in this fiscal year through the half year. A tendency, or sometimes people like to just say, well, if you spend it through half a year, you just double it and that give you the full year. Some things that's spot on. Some things that's very far from the truth, depending on how the item, where it falls in our year, and whether it gets done or not, early in the year or late in the year. The next column is FY '23 requests, so that's what either a department head, a committee chair, or an agency, or an individual requested for this coming year. So that's gonna be one of the primary focuses the next couple of nights, to just have people come in and explain where they are, what they think they would like to do with the town's money, or a portion of the town's money in the coming year. Percent change is just a change from what they're requesting versus what was expended in the previous, or what was budgeted, right? Yeah, what was budgeted in the current year.
Compared to what was requested.
Right,
this
so
year.
what was requested this year compared to what was approved by the voters in the previous year. The next column will be what the selectmen recommend when we go through this budget tonight and tomorrow night. That column is empty. Because the selectmen haven't heard it yet, what they'll be doing is they'll take all these requests. Tonight and tomorrow night are primarily a listening session and a chance to ask some questions about the requests. And then in March, by charter, the town has to, selectmen will have to complete their budget, because they have to present it to the budget committee with their recommendations in March. So that column, when you see this budget committee again in March, will be all filled out with what the selectmen are recommending the townspeople do for the coming year. Board of Selectmen percent change is what the selectmen are recommending for the coming year versus what was spent in what was approved in the current year. And then, again, there's a column for budget committee recommendations. That too will be empty. In the month of April or 1st of May-ish, the budget committee will be required to make its recommendations. We'll fill that column in. And then we'll do the same thing for the budget committee percent change, what you recommend versus what was approved this current year. And then TM approved, is town meeting approved in June. Town meeting's gonna gather, they're going to review the budget and the recommendations of both the selectmen and the budget committee, and they'll make their decision as to what they wish to expend for the public charges. So I'm talking pretty quick, everybody still on? Okay. Following our schedule, the first thing is, or the next thing is administration and finance, and that's on page 4. Everybody's on page 4, I'll start talking again. Administration and finance is primarily those of us in the town office. There are 5 positions, 5 or 6 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5 full-time positions and 1 part-time position. I'll run down this quickly because it may need a little more explanation. Wages, pretty straightforward. We pay the people that work for the town. What they get paid is listed about halfway down the page. You'll see an explanation of wages with more detail. Has town administrator, finance director, administrative assistant, down through public facilities director. FY '21 step is, shouldn't that say FY '20? No, that's right. FY '21 step is where people currently are. For all positions on this, with the exception of the town administrator, we have a pay scale that recognizes length of service and merit before you can move to another step. It goes through step 8, I believe is the top end of the scale. So you can see where the various people are, or the various positions are, what they're currently compensated for wages, and what the next year will be. 2 of the employees will be eligible for step increases in the coming year. Those are the two of the 3 administrative assistants, 1 full-time and 1 part-time. Whew. And it's only the first 20 minutes. FICA and Medicare is a straight calculation based on a percentage of people's wages. 7.65%. I will tell you, if you do 7.65% of $337,915, you don't come up with that number. And the reason is because, we'll talk, well, a couple lines down, we have medical and dental insurance, and we offer people that have insurance elsewhere buyout of it, so they don't take ours at a reduced cost to the town, and that's a taxable benefit to them. So if you do that calculation on FICA or Medicare on later wages, you'll see that it works out to 7.65%. Retirement, and if I'm going too fast or somebody has questions, holler out. Retirement, the town is generous enough to allow full-time employees to participate in a retirement program through, well, it says ICMA in here, it also is the, what is it,
Mission Square.
Mission Square, they've changed their name in the last year. It used to be the International County and City Management Association Retirement Corp., that's ICMA. That can be a match of employees' wages up to 6.5% of their base wage. Medical and dental insurance, the town offers both medical and dental insurance to its employees. The employees, depending on when you were hired, your contract, or what coverage you elect, dictates the percentages that are paid. This coming year, we're anticipating a 0% increase over what we budgeted in the previous year. Fortunately, our insurance hasn't changed that much in the current year, so we'll all find out if that pans out or not, but we believe it to be. Running down the page, I don't know if you want me to do each one of these, but I can. Advertising, we advertise for public hearing notices, bid requirements, employee recruitment, ads in the paper, primarily. Audit, we're required annually to have an independent audit done of the town's financial statements. We're required by law. We've budgeted for $500 for an increase. We're exploring possibly going out to bid or seeking services with the school and Hope and Appleton to kind of do it as a package, because all three of those towns participate with Union 69 in the school, and there may be some cost savings available to us. Liens and discharges, we're required to file liens for people that unfortunately don't pay their taxes on a timely basis. That has a cost associated to it. And when we discharge that lien, when people do pay, that has a cost associated to it. We do recoup those costs because the law allows us to, and the person is charged, but we need to have an expense in order for a line to be able to charge that to until such times we get the money back. Postage is pretty straightforward. We do mailings for tax bills, we do mailings for reminder cards, we do mailings. Professional development is education and training for people that work here in the office to keep them current with what's going on in the world and laws around us. Town memberships are outlined on the top of the second page. We belong to the Maine Municipal Association, Mission Square, which is the Retirement Corporation, Midcoast Economic Development District, and then a number of us belong to various associations depending on our job titles. Printing is town reports, ballots, tax bills, checks, forms, you name it, although we don't pay for checks anymore, right?
No.
So, old typo, or old thing in the list. Publications is subscription services for either print or electronic subscriptions. Tax maps are updated annually through a contractor. The next is all our computer purchases, hardware support, our Trio licensing, where you see software licensing. When you come in and license your dog, or register a car, or register a boat, or our tax program, it's all done through Trio, and we pay a license fee annually for that work, so we can use that program, basically. Copier lease and overage, we lease the copier here in the town office. When did we get that? This one? whenever we got it.
This summer.
Yeah, you'll see that that's a slight reduction. We actually had a reduced, when we sought a new lease. We switched companies and got a better price for ourselves. Copy or overage, we have a fee if we go over a certain number of copies that we have to pay per page. Supplies of the notebooks you have in front of you, paper, toilet paper, well, maybe not toilet paper, not toilet paper, that's in a different line. Pens, ink, you name it. Travel, you'll see a substantially increased line item for travel. The increase is primarily due to our public facilities director coming on board and the utilization of a private car for municipal business. We reimburse people at the IRS rate for business use. Employees have to complete a log, tell us what day it was, where they went, how many miles it was, starting and ending miles. And then cellular telephone, both the town administrator and the public facilities director are, in my case, the town gives me a nice phone so they can call me all the time, and the public facilities director, we reimburse him a portion of his costs for that. And that was as quick as I could talk to administration and finance, and I know Dottie has a question. No? Oh. Anyone else, since I just picked on Dottie? Sorry, Dottie.
I have broad shoulders.
I know you do.
David, you're doing great.
Am I?
You've got a whole 4 minutes.
Don't make him talk more.
I
Come on.
left 4 minutes for questions. I don't wanna leave too much time. All right, so I did talk quickly, and I appreciate everybody bearing with me. You'll be so tired of hearing me talk by tomorrow night that you'll never wanna see me again. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, then let's get ahead of schedule a little bit, and we'll flip the page to page 6, which is animal control, and I will extend the apologies of our animal control officer, Heidi Blood, who could not attend tonight. She did say that if the board wants to see her in person, she'll come in to one of the other meetings, but she thought I could adequately explain the budget tonight in her absence. And the same goes for the budget committee. If somebody isn't here tonight that you'd like to talk to or you want more information from, just let us know. When you have your meetings, we'll get them to come to one of them or get you written answers if necessary. So animal control, the town is required by statute to have an animal control officer. The town for a number of years has employed Heidi Blood from Searsmont to take on that role and duties. Heidi obviously works for us on a very part-time basis, so basically on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if she's not there available, we'll drum up somebody to take care of your animal issues. This is for domestic animals. If it's something wild, somebody else will, game wardens will take care of that, or should. We pay our animal control officer a stipend that we're proposing to increase 5.9%. You'll hear that over and over again in the coming 24 hours or 26 hours. And we, in addition to that, and I said FICA and Medicare is a straight percentage, and you'd understand that on future ones, except it doesn't work out right on this one because we also provide a communication reimbursement to the animal control officer, which is a taxable benefit. So if you add the stipend and the communication reimbursement and divide that or multiply that by 7.65%, you'll come out with FICA or Medicare. Animal shelter, we pay a fee to Paws in Camden for use of the shelter so that if we collect a stray, we have a place to take it, and they are under contract to accept that. We have a small budget for supplies and memberships in the Animal Control Officer Association, and we pay the employee mileage based on actual miles driven on behalf of the town. Anybody have any questions on animal control? Ooh, now the easiest one for all night, parking enforcement. We used to budget for a parking control attendant. A couple of years ago, that position was eliminated, and we kept money in there for supplies last year, as you can see. We've moved that to protection other. We're not gonna have a page on the budget year after year after year for $50. So we'll talk about that under protection other later this evening. With that, we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Look at that. Unless somebody has some questions, we're gonna roll into fire chief. Do you wanna ask Susan if she wants to come in and listen? She is a member of the public.
Hello, everyone.
Chief?
Good evening.
Hello.
For anybody that doesn't know, this is Don Fullington III, Chief of the Lincolnville Fire Department. And we're on Protection Fire Department, which is page 8. And I don't know if you wanna talk, but they're probably so tired of hearing me talk.
I can talk. I mean, it's pretty simple. It really didn't change a whole lot from last fiscal year. Money-wise, we stayed on budget. The only thing I removed is, I believe, $5,000 from the equipment fund, and that was allocated, that was money that was allocated last fiscal, or this fiscal year technically, for that undercarriage cleaning steam pressure washer thing that we're still waiting to come from wherever it is. Pretty much all quotes for hose testing and fire extinguisher testing for next year, and everything else seems to stay the same, except for they anticipate fire truck maintenance is probably gonna go up a little bit. But we got rid of one truck that needs constant maintenance with a brand new truck that's still under warranty, so I assume we just stay safe and keep it where it is now in case we have any other issues with other trucks. I think there was the firefighter accident insurance coverage was just added. Kate showed me that today.
Yeah, if you recall on my opening remarks, we talked about some of the new things. The very last line on the, before we get into the detail, you see about halfway down the page, says firefighter accident insurance coverage. This past year, the Board of Selectmen asked our Wage and Personnel Policy Board to look into what it might cost to provide some basic insurance beyond workers' comp for firefighters. They came back with a couple of options. The board chose to budget this amount for coverage, and I'm not an insurance guru, but so that's it. And that's why it says new across there for percentages, because you can't calculate a percent change when there's nothing before it. Either be infinity or, the one thing that Chief didn't touch on is you'll note under the officer stipends and firefighter wages, there are the 5.9% included in that, and firefighter wages you'll see is greater than 5.9% because we've estimated more hours. Seems to be a popular group that gets called out more and more every year. We compensate firefighters 1 hour per call. So if they go out and they out there 12 hours,
12 hours or 15 minutes, yeah.
they get an hour compensation. So nobody's doing it for the money, I don't believe.
No, nobody's doing it for the money. Yeah, that's all that I've got. Does anybody have any questions?
I just had a quick question. Who do we contract out for the snow removal, or is that done in-house?
That's Farley's,
Yeah.
it's through the town.
When we last did out snow removal, we did not only roadways, but sand salt building yard, town office, 2 fire stations. At the time, we did the LAA building, beach parking lot, and I'm probably.
So all municipal properties?
All our municipal things, with the exception of the pier.
Okay.
We're put into that bid, we'll talk about that tomorrow night, but we're in the this budget will cover the 5th year of the 5-year contract. So at some point, later this calendar year, we'll likely look to seek input on what things we might like to do differently, or do better, or don't do quite as much of. It's a constant, balancing act between what's required of us and by law for roads, not so much for the departments, and what people are willing to pay for.
I think I understand this, but I'm not exactly sure if I do or not. It says 5 wages, you just get paid for an hour of, if you go out. Now, what if you go like to all the fires you've had all over the county, and you go assist, how is that covered for?
It counts as one call, so if you, even if it's a mutual, like a mutual aid call
Mhm.
to Camden Fire, everybody that goes to Camden Fire gets paid for one call, so it'll be 1 hour.
Which is $15 an hour.
Right.
They get $15 to go home,
Yeah, okay.
even if it's out.
All right, but I wasn't sure if there was a difference if you went out of town kind of thing, so it's all the same amount.
All of it, yes.
Whoosh, you guys.
Josh, you had a question.
Yeah, is it
Thank you.
typical for volunteer firefighter organizations to only get 1 hour per call in Maine?
I think it depends on what community you're in and what the, you know, how much money they have in taxes, you know, I mean, I think Rockport, like, you know, Rockport has all volunteers except for their chief, and I believe they get paid, I think it's $16 per hour. So they get paid hourly, whether they're, you know, I think they get paid a minimum of an hour, so if they show up and they're there for 15 minutes with a faulty smoke detector or whatever, or if they're at a structure fire for 5 hours, you know, they get 5 hours.
Okay. And we've always done it this way in Lincolnville, where it's that a flat fee per call.
For volunteers, yes.
Okay.
My understanding way back in the day was that they were truly a volunteer versus a call
Right.
fire service. And there was some question with regard to workers' compensation insurance, that if you weren't paid, you weren't a worker, you weren't covered.
We're covered, right.
So they instituted the 1 hour call, so
I
that
see.
they would be paid, so that they would, that has been, my understanding is that has been changed now, so if you're truly a volunteer firefighter, you are covered under workers' compensation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can, Josh, also, I can see probably in the near future, like 3, 4, 5 years, that we may have to start talking about paying volunteers, you know, by the hour, 4 hours, you know, I'm seeing some other younger kids that are trying to join, but they can't leave their jobs because they need that income.
Yeah.
So they won't leave their job
Right.
to come help, you know, the fire department, so, at this point, we're doing really good, but you know, the trend seems to be that it is working that way, as people just can't afford to volunteer.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Karen.
I don't see a line item for services such as protection for the building, fire alarm.
We don't have that. Which has
Okay.
it's been.
I
in the
thought
works.
we went over this last year.
But we budgeted for that, we have not installed that.
Okay. What about video surveillance?
I don't know, I mean, it might not be a bad idea, but luckily, knock on wood, plastic wood, you know, we don't ever have any issues with anything going missing or vandalism or anything. I mean, I think the only one incident in the new fire station is we had somebody drive across the lawn and
Yeah.
wreck the saw. I don't know, I think it might be a good idea to have at least, you know, smoke detector sensors, or I don't know exactly what they are, like as Seacoast, you know, and maybe, you know, water flow sensors in there, so that
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
something does, you know, if, you know,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
sprinkler system goes off, it would be a good idea to have that as well.
Others for the chief, while he's here? I don't get a chance.
That was painless. Thank you, Chief.
Easy.
And send,
No, thank you.
and send Pete this way.
Oh, Peter's here. Oops, sorry.
It's all right, I'm just gonna flip that up to where he is. I'm gonna turn the page to, a couple pages to page 10. Peter Rollins, who's our emergency management director, is joining us on the hot seat. Thanks, Pete, for coming. It's on page 10 under protection other. Inch or two down the page is the summary. And Pete's here, can tell you all he does and what he might need.
Yeah, so basically we go to monthly meetings, go through exercises on contacting people, working with the other towns, getting ideas from the other towns. They're putting together an AM radio station, low power AM radio station to get old people in the area if something happens. What I'm planning on doing this year, if we're getting closer to the end of isolating so much and getting together with people more, is try to get the reserves program started that we were getting going. And I want to have an open house informational type meeting, do a little advertising in the local papers, and try to get that organized. That's my goal for this year.
Could you refresh my memory? I think you talked about that last year, the reserves program, yes?
Yeah, and the year before.
Okay, yeah.
We've been trying to get it going. The idea is that I'm a member of the fire department, have been for 30 years this month. And we often get people who talk to us and say, hey, I'd love to help out, but I really don't have the time. But if something big happens, let me know.
Okay.
All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna organize those people, and we're gonna have a let us know list. And if something big does happen, we'll go, okay, these people can operate radios, these people can do traffic control. This is a group of people who are willing to go around and knock people's doors. So we'll just put together a basic list of people and what they're willing to do, and train them in how to operate the radios at the fire station, how to use portables, how to direct traffic, things like that.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. And if all goes well, excuse me, if all goes well, we might get that up and running, or at least open house.
Yeah, plan to have it up.
Great, yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Susan?
May I?
Sure, why not?
I'm just curious, do you collaborate at all with the search and rescue organization?
Unofficially, but I know all of them, and we work with them with the fire department. We did quite a few things this past summer, looking for a few people. But yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any on-the-spot questions for Pete?
I guess I just have a quick question. Have you felt that in the last year with the pandemic, have there been any challenges in the budget that you felt could have been helpful?
Not really. It's all about preparedness. So there really isn't much money to spend. The money that I was just looking to spend is for printing flyers, refreshments for the open house. If we do have a parade this year, I'd love to get like a little thing going at the parade, have something like that. It's basically just like an introductory thing to people.
Yeah.
So I really haven't had any budgetary needs
Okay.
to speak of.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
No, that's it for me.
No, you can stay if you want.
Okay.
I think they're ready to move up, ready to hear me talk again for
Okay.
plenty
Thank
more
you,
time.
Peter.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been so long.
Has been so long since I spoke. So we're gonna remain on page 10 and do the remainder of this protection other. Streetlights, town leases 6 or 7 streetlights, I can't remember the exact number, from Central Maine Power Company. We converted those to LED a couple of years, or a year or so ago, and we reduced the number, and hence
Sorry?
the reduction in the request. Insurances, you can see the list: workers' compensation, unemployment, MMA risk pool, and our deductible, and what we're requesting for this coming year, and what we've expended last completed fiscal year and halfway through this year. That is proposed for a slight increase in the coming year. Legal services, town employees, contracted legal services, both a town attorney and, if necessary, what's called a conflict counsel, so that if the town attorney has previously represented somebody that's in conflict with the town, so that she can't represent us, we would go out and hire what's called a conflict counsel. Or if, I'm trying to think of something, if the town attorney represented the planning board, or helped the planning board with an issue, and the issue went to the Board of Appeals, then the town attorney couldn't advise the Board of Appeals as to how to handle it, because she's already has a client, the planning board. So we would hire an outside conflict counsel. The town attorney's fees are proposed in January of 2023, or 11 months from now, to increase to $210 an hour from its current rate. Emergency management, just spoke with Pete. Ambulance service, the town contracts with Northeast Mobile Health. Our contract is ending at the end of June. The EMS Performance Committee asked the managers and administrators of the 4 towns that participate with Northeast Mobile Health, which is Camden, Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope, to commence with negotiations with Northeast, and we have initiated that. There's a lot that hinges on Northeast's relationship also with the hospital, because they do transfers for the hospital. So that's in the works, and hopefully, as I alluded to or in the opening remarks, we will have a more firm number as we progress through this negotiations. Knox Dispatch, Knox Communications, dispatches for EMS. Our EMS is located in Rockport, and they also dispatch our fire. So we have to pay Knox County a certain sum of money, $10,653 is what proposed for the coming year. And parking enforcement, this used to, as I said earlier, this was on its own page when we had some staff or some hired help with that. Right this past year, yours truly was the parking attendant when necessary, and we have warning cards that we put on people's vehicles, tickets if necessary. We typically try the friendly approach of giving everybody a warning first time, unless you're parking, in an accessible spot or blocking a road or something like that. But everybody gets a fair warning usually, and then tickets after that. So just $50 to buy some supplies if necessary. Questions regarding any of the protection other?
Just one quick one on the ambulance service. I know you guys are in negotiations, so there isn't a set number, but is that a realistic percentage that you're anticipating?
I hope not. As a rule, if I'm gonna take a educated guess or make a guesstimate on an expense, I'm gonna guess on the higher side when it comes to something like this, and then come back in 2 weeks and say, hey, it's halfway in between. EMS is in a state of flux in the state of Maine, not just our 4 towns, but in the state of Maine. There are ambulance services that are pilfering employees from other ambulance services with sign-on bonuses and $1 more an hour, and they're just employees moving from one service to another, you know, every year or whatever, just to better themselves. And it's very challenging. There's a definite shortage of qualified emergency service personnel. And and our service is no different. I would anticipate in the coming year that we'll see an increase. I don't know the magnitude of it. Sorry. And maybe with any luck, we'll actually be offered a multi-year contract, and we'll be able to convince our partnering communities that would be a good idea, and then we'll have it known for a longer period of time. A couple of years ago, we had a 2-year contract, and some of our others, partnering communities, chose one, and this last time, we were only offered one, so we took it. Any other protection, other questions? Yeah, just doing well.
Unfortunately, I need to leave to go to a previously scheduled meeting.
There's more fun tomorrow, so hopefully.
Actually, I'm unfortunately gonna be in Portland tomorrow.
Ah,
Oh,
For
yeah.
the meeting that I'm going to now.
And in weeks to months to come.
I will watch it all on the meeting.
That's good.
Thanks,
travel
Steve.
safe.
See you later.
Next is town office building, which is on page 11. That's obviously the building we are in now. We have a custodian that cleans in the building part-time, that we pay a wage to, working a little more hours. Believe it or not, we've now crossed the 8-year mark in our building. And like anything that ages 8 years, all of a sudden it's, more light bulbs going, more things for him to clean up, pick up, whatever. So you see a little bit more there. Trash removal, we have a contractor that picks up trash out of our, it's not a dumpster, but an outside storage area. Landscaping, we hire somebody that mows the lawn, picks up the leaves, rakes the lawn, whatever else. We are looking at bidding that again this year. Our public facilities director has started on that, preparing the bid specification for that, because not only here do we have that, we have landscaping services at the fire stations, the harbor, and we're doing Penobscot Park this year. So there's Penobscot Park being new, has quite a lawn area to it. Security system, we have a security system in here, intrusion, smoke, fire, water.
Propane.
Yeah, gas. Yeah, we were required this year, because we have a propane boiler, because of the very unfortunate incident that occurred in Farmington a couple of years ago. They changed the statute, so we had to put in a propane or gas alarm system in the room that has the boiler in it. So that's what we have a security system for. Building maintenance is our various systems, a heating system, the cooling system, water, wastewater, flooring, fire extinguishers, anything that needs maintenance in the building. Electricity, we didn't talk about this under fire. We went pretty quickly over it, but I'll stop and talk here. We haven't finalized the purchase, but we've purchased the solar array at the fire station. And our cost we'll no longer have the supply, we have transmission and distribution costs, but we're not gonna be paying a per kilowatt charge. So when we see electricity throughout the budget, the $240 a month is basically what it costs us to have a meter on the side of the building. And that's all we're going to pay for that, with the exception of the upkeep and maintenance of the solar, which we'll talk about later. Equipment purchases is a shovel, a broom, a hose, slop bucket, or whatever to mop. We've also, there's an increase proposed there. The public facilities director desk is, It was a good desk at one point, and it's a desk at best, and I'd like to replace that desk and get 2 office chairs. One of our office chairs is, he's sitting and it sinks when it wants to, like every other time. And the other needs to be recycled. Heating fuel, the town office, we have a very small propane boiler in the basement that does the old portion of the building and is the backup in this part. We use heat pumps in this end of the building that's operated from electricity. The backup, because the heat pumps lose efficiency at, I think it's -13, they stop working, basically, and they lose efficiency as it gets colder. And so we have radiant floor heating out here that only comes on if the systems talk to each other and turns that on. So we have a propane tank out back. Also, the propane powers the emergency generator for this building. So, supplies is our general cleaning supplies, trash bags, paper products, whatever else in here. Telephone, we have 5 telephone lines in and out of the building, plus a fax line and long distance charges. Website and internet, town has a website and we provide internet service here in the office. Both we have a public internet for people that come in that wish to use it, and then our internet service for the office itself. And also in that line is our remote meeting expenses for our Zoom setup. And finally, snow removal. The snow removal here is our parking lot, the entrances, sidewalk to the post office, around the dumpster, the flagpole, the fuel tanks, heat pumps, and walkways to it. Next, now we're going to go, well, we're ahead of schedule by quite a lot. And let's go to page 21, if you would. I must be putting everybody to sleep. And we'll talk about municipal support, and if Kayla talks very slowly about general assistance, then perhaps our other people will line up quickly. But if not, everybody on page 21? General assistance is a state program that's administered locally. We have a general assistance ordinance. Some people refer to general assistance as welfare. State of Maine is general assistance. Kayla Lacombe, who's the finance director, is also our general assistance administrator, and she can explain the ins and outs of that program and her budget request.
So I've kept the request the same as last year. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of requests. And a lot of the requests I have been able to help with other programs. There's a lot of extra funds given to Waldo County Community Action Program for COVID-related expenses, rent-related expenses. So I've worked with a lot of those programs. Because a lot of people, for the general assistance program for an individual, you'd be looking at between $800 to $900 a month as an income. So a lot of people that are working are over that income, and it puts them out of the program for need. So I try to find other ways to assist them than with this program. But this program is great for people that have recently lost a job or had recent health problems that have made it so they're not able to work. And I just, thankfully, we haven't had a whole lot of requests for that. But I kept it the same because I never know what's gonna come in. Yes.
And so do you try and use that up through other venues during the year, or does it roll over into the general account, what's left over?
What's
you know,
left over does go into the general account. This is the one line item that we are able to overrun without approval. So if for some reason that isn't enough, then I am able to continue to assist. We are reimbursed. I think around 75% from the state. So if I help somebody with $1,000 rent, which is over what I can, but if, let's say 1,000, then we'll get reimbursed about 750 or so from the state.
Provided we follow the rules.
Yes.
That's why Kayla gets to do it.
Yes, there is a nice application that they have to fill out. The church here in the center has a fund that they help people with that they normally will send them to me first, and then depending on eligibility, what they need, I'll reach out to them. Or if they come to me and it isn't something I'm able to help with, then I'll reach out to them for help. So.
And we're really trying to be the, kind of the clearinghouse, so that if people are in need, and they don't qualify for this, we know the other resources where we can send people, and the same thing if people go to their place of worship, or they go to some of the civic groups and they need assistance, and those groups can help, they can steer them us. You know, it's really that community that, you know, trying to give people that extra hand, get them through.
Do you know roughly how many requests you've received approximately last year?
This year, I had a returning family that I worked with for a few months. And then I've had probably about 3 to 4 other requests. I don't think all of them received help, but.
Gotcha.
Now, I would say that's over the past 12 months, so not necessarily fiscal year, calendar year.
Gotcha. So potentially 5.
Yeah.
Got it.
So what happens if you have more requests than you have money?
So with the general assistance program, if they qualify for the general assistance program, I could overspend that account if I need to. We do have other funds, grants and stuff that were given that I can use to help the working poor and stuff like that. So there are other funds that the town has that I can use if I need to. And some of the situations aren't, a big one is like a security deposit or, you know, heat, or there's some things that they get so far behind on the general assistance isn't able to help enough on, that they, you know, they need that assistance to kind of get in. And like I said, I try not to just help them, I try to help them get out of the situation, so it's not a continuous thing that they need. I can put a Band-Aid on it for a month, but that doesn't fix anything in the long term, so I try to help them get out of the situation.
Any others on general assistance? While we're on this same page in our,
Rosie is here.
Rose is here, but Diane's
I don't want to
not.
interrupt, but
maybe Diane's decided not to come tonight.
Could be.
Are you anticipating Diane? Well, I'll keep talking. You can come in if you'd like. We're getting noisy out here before. Make yourself at home. So I'll do the rest of municipal support, so with the exception of those that are coming in a minute for detail. McGonagall Watershed, so she's coming tomorrow, right? Yeah. Cemetery, he's here. Let me see. Would you like to do cemeteries now? Out of order? Oh, sure. Come over next to me. Don't be afraid. So this is Rosie Gary. We're gonna talk about cemeteries and cemetery trustees. Mr. Gary is the chair of the cemetery trustees. And with that, it's all, the floor is yours to explain what you might like for funds for the coming year?
I-
And they have, this is what they have from you. And what you do with those monies or intend to do with those monies would be good.
there's no change, we're not asking for any change. Hope to keep it, the same. We, anticipating doing, a little more work to some of the abandoned, ancient cemeteries. I'm hoping to do, a little bit more than we got done last year. We got quite a bit done. We were able, the Fletcher Cemetery, we were able to, rebuild the covers for the stones that are next to the road, and we had those redone, and the guys have put them up. We hired somebody to put them up and take them down each year. The mowing is pretty much, cleanup and stuff is pretty much the same. Everything is pretty much on board with that.
Maybe you'd explain how many cemeteries there are in town that you're aware of. Closing in on 30, right?
Something like that, yes.
And how many have active cemetery associations or corporations that you don't really have to become involved with too much?
I think there's some.
So that puts us roughly around 20 cemeteries that are ancient, abandoned, or whatever, that the cemetery trustees see that at least minimal maintenance is done to.
Yes,
Respect those that have come before us.
yes.
And you have duties at Memorial Day?
Yes, that's the same,
I know what they are, but they don't know, so don't tell me, tell them.
Well, Memorial Day is, we need to get the flags, out, we put the flags out, and we try to do that about, 5 to 10 days before Memorial Day, and, we purchase, the town, purchases those, that's part of the.
So those are for veterans
Those
graves?
for the veterans' graves, and then we have, 3 fire chiefs also, that we pass fire chiefs that we take care of. And, I couldn't get a hold of, I wanted to ask about the dinner thing, because we didn't use that last year. And I'm trying to find out, but I couldn't get a hold of him today, and he was away all weekend, so, to find out if they're still planning on doing that. The dinner, $175?
Oh, that's for Memorial Day, we haven't got that yet.
What are we talking, I thought we was talking about Memorial Day.
Well, I was talking about the flag. Oh, the flags you do for
Yeah,
Memorial.
Memorial Day, okay?
See, I don't know what I'm talking about either.
Cemeteries, let's not Mission Creek.
So, yeah, so we're required as a town to maintain veterans' graves to a certain standard.
Yes,
How many veterans' graves do you believe we have in town?
well,
A lot.
I don't know. I
Well,
don't
how many
know.
flags you put out?
Around 200.
So if need be, if somebody else weren't maintaining those cemeteries, we, the town, through the trustees, would make sure that those 200 lots receive some care.
Yes.
Sorry, just trying to help.
No, that's good.
Everybody
I just-
understand. And if you didn't all understand Rosie earlier when he was talking about the boxes, we have a cemetery on High Street, Fletcher Cemetery, which is located very close to the road, or the road is located very close to the cemetery, one or the other. And a number of years ago, the cemetery trustees constructed some boxes for protection that go over the close gravestones before winter sets in, so that snowplow damage or snow coming off, not that the plow is hitting the stones, but the snow coming off the end of the plow could do a number on those stones, so that's what he's referring to. Before we get to Memorial Day, when I already jumped the gun in the Veterans Park, any questions about cemeteries? for the cemetery trustee chair.
Who helps you put all those flags in?
I put a thing out on the Lakeville Bulletin Board, and we get an abundance of volunteers, so far, you know, and it takes, less than an hour, usually 40 minutes to do Youngtown, all the cemeteries, and then down in back here, down in the woods, there's 2 Revolutionary War, veterans down here in the woods, and so I walk in there and do that one. That, you know, we do Youngtown, but Randy Stearns is the overseer of Maplewood, and he takes care of that. And sometimes the Browns, Jeff Brown would like a little help with French Cemetery, and sometimes it depends on what he's got going, and sometimes we help him with that. We're here to just help, not to, so, yeah, we have volunteers, mostly, there's probably 3 or 4 Lincolnville people, but believe it or not, most of the people come from Camden and Rockport and as far away as Waldeboro to help us with that, so,
Thank you.
no problem.
Hello, Diane, come in and grab a seat.
I'm not late, am
No, no, we're early for the first time
I?
ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't jinx us, Dave.
I know, there's always tomorrow. Shall we let's get back on schedule and back up a step and speak. This is Diane O'Brien, for anybody that can't tell who Diane is or doesn't know her from underneath the mask. And both Diane and Rosie are members of the Historical Society, and I presume you both are on the board of directors or
Yes.
title is.
The president,
And Madam President is going to explain to you the request of the Lincolnville Historical Society.
Okay, well, we are asking for $5,000 this year, which will enable us to put in an ADA compliant bathroom in the building at the beach schoolhouse. Any of you who've had the pleasure of using the bathroom that's there now know that this is desperately needed. We'll be hooked up to the sewer project, I think once they can dig, the ground is frozen by the fall. We've been working hard ever since we bought the building from the town a year ago, December, I think it was when it went through. We've been raising money, we've been done a capital campaign, with a goal of $325,000, which I will note is half of what the town estimated it was gonna cost to fix the building. We've raised about 2/3 of that, but we're spending it pretty quickly. We've so far have put in 2 steel beams under the second floor, which was the biggest issue that people had with the building, was the structural integrity of the thing. So those beams are in place. In the process, the ceiling had to come down, and then the process of taking down the ceiling, the plaster and the walls came down. So now those walls are being insulated, and next week it will all be sheetrocked. New wiring, new lighting downstairs, should be really quite nice. Number of other things that are still new windows. Siding on, to determine how many of the walls. The west wall, they've already stripped and repaired, what they found underneath, which was some rot, not too bad, but they fixed what was there. And then the siding will be done, painted, and,
new shingles,
hopefully have a new bathroom. What?
new shingles, the shingles are
The
in the
roof.
process right now for the roof.
Oh, yeah, the roof, yeah, they just sent out, he just
Yes.
sent out some, some color samples.
Yes.
There's no way you can see the roof. I mean, there's no view in town where you can see the roof of that building, but, yeah, we're gonna have a new we are debating the color for that. Also, I will say that, our membership has just bumped way up, we're up over 300 members now, including several lifetime members who pay $200 to join. That's a sort of a separate account, that's the money that we use to sort of maintain the collection. We have a good group of volunteers who are working every week. We meet for several hours, inventory everything in the collection, which is really a big job. I mean, think from a little town, how much stuff we have.
We have a lot of volunteers,
Yeah,
that
lots
are
of
working on different documents
Yeah.
and paperwork and stuff.
that's right. So.
Any questions for Diane or Rosie regarding the Historical Society's request?
We're very, very fortunate to have this historical society. We are extremely busy in the summertimes with people coming from all over, and we have inquiries from all over. You'd be amazed, the people that have, some sort of geological background to Lincolnville. It's amazing from what parts of the country it comes in.
Yeah, and, another thing I'll mention, that we've started a new committee formed to study the history of the indigenous people of Lincolnville, which something we've never really done. We've had a little bit of information, but there was sort of, some people said, well, why don't we learn more about who was here? And, we're pretty excited about this committee. They meet regularly at DOTS, I think, and hash out things that they're learning. And it's a committee of three or four people right now. And we're planning, we'll be open all summer, because we can open the museum once it's safe to open the fire escape was removed. And they blew it up over with grain, right up over the top of the building, and took it to Rockport Steel, and they refurbished it, and it will be coming back and replaced. So we'll have our fire escape back, because it was all kind of falling apart. So we're planning to be open in the summer on our regular hours, but then we're gonna have a grand opening on Indigenous Peoples' Day in October. So that's gonna be that's our goal, to have it all looking good. So, that's all.
Great to hear.
Wonderful.
Diane, you're welcome to stay if you'd like,
Oh,
but you're also excused.
Run away quickly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Diane.
Don't forget your hat.
Oh,
That's Rosie's. Yes, Rosie's.
Oh, that's Rosie's?
All right, back to Mr. Gary. We're still on page 21, municipal support. He's also the chair of the Memorial Day Parade Committee and can answer any questions or concerns that you might have about their request for Memorial Day. Which is really detailed on page 22, even though the summary request is on page 21. You want to talk a little bit about Memorial Day?
Not much has happened in the last year or so with it, and so, but, like I said, I need to find out if that $175 is gonna be a carryover, whether they didn't use it, because
Yeah.
they paid it.
No, that's a good point. Right now, unless townspeople, there are very limited exceptions that are set forth in the charter for capital projects. We can carry money from one year to the next without voting if we haven't completed the project. But unless we ask townspeople specifically for authorization to carry money from one year to the next, any monies not expended during the fiscal year goes into our unassigned fund balance. And tomorrow night, late, when we talk about revenues and offsets, we take money from that unassigned fund balance to reduce the property taxes in the coming year. It's available to townspeople to appropriate for any purpose they see fit, but that's typically what happens. So Mr. Gary was asking about the meals, we had $175 in last year's budget, for Memorial Day when you feed who?
We feed the Link, if they're available. As a rule in the past, we fed the Lincolnville Band, the Masonic Hall in Rockport. Because we do Camden, Rockport, and Lincolnville parades. And so, the Masonic Hall feeds the, Lincolnville, band. It also feeds the, Camden Hills or Camden.
Hammond Hills Regional High School band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, takes care of the, color guard, the marchers, they feed him also. And the bus drivers, and, you know, those particular, people, and that's what's.
So Lincolnville makes a contribution to that as.
Camden makes Concord and Rockport.
Right. So what he was requesting is last year, they didn't have that food because of pandemic situation. He was wondering if that money would be just carried over. And the answer is no. That's why you see within this budget, a request for additional monies this year. So, just so you know. And this really is for Memorial Day 2023 in this budget, because this year's money with Memorial Day hasn't occurred yet. So if everything goes as planned in the budget in Memorial Day 2023, you'd be putting flags on veterans' graves.
Yes,
You have a speaker that you pay a little bit at Memorial Day, a minister. He pays for some band costs, the wreaths that get put out on the memorials,
Wreaths,
plus
yeah.
down to the furlong for the kids.
we have 3 wreaths.
And then the meals for the participants. Anything else from Mr. Gary on that issue? Don't go with it. He's a popular guy. Also, he has, on page 18, under Public Works Other, Mr. Gary helps to oversee our Veterans Park and the maintenance of it. And there is a request for $1,000 in the budget for that. And you can answer any questions anybody might have about
That's for maintenance. We do a maintenance out of that. Joan, at this particular, Joan Richardson, I think that's her.
Yep.
She volunteers the labor, but she does around the flagpole, and boy, I'll tell you, I'd be lost without her. I'll tell you, really lost without her, because she does the volunteer work, but she does the expense of the flowers. She bought them one year out of her own pocket, as other people have bought them, and it's a lot, because it's a really nice job. But we also have things like, we need to trim up around the flagpole, we need to edge, because the rocks and stuff just get scattered back, the little pea stone walkway, and we need to do ongoing maintenance. You know, the back of the memorial will need to be repainted. The backside will need to be repainted this coming year. So that's what we've got going there. And flag, believe it or not, the last time I had Karen order an extra flag, and I need to come and get it. So we'll have to order some more. The wind blows continually at Brisbane Park, and I mean it blows, and the flag really, it takes a beating, you know, so we want to replace it. So we don't want to get in trouble like the post office next door.
No. Anybody have questions about Veterans Park maintenance?
Is that enough?
What's that?
Is that enough?
I believe so this year,
$1,000.
yeah, this term, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we are very, very fortunate to have Mr. Libby do the mowing, and we basically, I think we kick him, we buy him some gas, and that's about it. And I'm gonna tell you, as you know, so that's kind of his volunteer thing to help with that. So we're very fortunate with that, so yes, that helps. That stuff all helps. When you got volunteer stuff, it helps. So yeah, I think we're okay this year, but every now and then, something's gonna happen and we're gonna have to, at some point, I'm gonna come or somebody's gonna come and say, it's time to do such and such and such and such. So, and just to let you know, for information, the names on the memorial, they, except for the center ones, which will never change, the outside ones, some of those change because somebody comes and says, hey, my grandfather graduated from Winterville, or was a Winterville resident when he enlisted, and we weren't aware of it. So they give me a DD 214, and then I believe I present it to the select board. I think that's how that works, and the select board. And then if I say that the DD 214 shows that they were living in Winterville at the time, then the beauty of this is, on the outside names, is we can go to Adventure Advertising. They just print us up a whole new thing, and the name goes in alphabet like it should, so that, like with the wall at Camden, they added extra names, and they have to chisel them in stone, and they're not alphabetically anymore. But we are set up so we just replace that whenever it needs to be. I just get a hold of Adventure Advertising, and they just print up a new one. We take the screws out, slide the new one in. It's a really good deal. It's a really good deal.
So is there money in savings for things of that nature, or in unanticipated expenses, or do you operate on $1,000 a year?
We operate on 1,000. We haven't had to do any changes and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. They assured me at the time that was not wicked expensive to do something like that, to change that out. And then the rest of it is just labor, which I would change out. I said I would do that. So at this point in time, no, Karen, I would say we're pretty good right now.
I asked that question because I wonder if there's thoughts for the future, just so that in case of some catastrophic event, you didn't have to come to the town for a large sum of money to refurbish or repair or something of that nature. I mean, it would only take one vehicle to do a lot of damage there, and I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So I wondered if that's been considered.
Well,
Or something
I've
like
had
a
some
perpetual care.
conversation, I believe, with the town administrator on that, and we basically, if something happened, I think we do have.
We'll find a way.
We'll have, and then we could say, I mean, we're not gonna have I can't see it having a giant expense down there.
Okay.
For what we're asking is pretty reasonable and rational all the way around for right now. But it's amazing what that little piece of ground, even though it belonged to the town of Lincolnville, it's amazing how much money is in that little tiny piece right there. There's around, if I'm not mistaken, there's around $35,000 or $40,000 in that little area, and a lot of that stuff was done with volunteer labor. So that's just amazing how money can be eaten up. So yes, Karen, it's a good point. Well taken, but I still think we're okay right now.
Okay.
Any other questions, or can we send this guy
No,
back in?
no. Thank you very much, Rosie.
Ready? You're done. You're welcome to stay if you want,
I appreciate that.
but no.
Well, there's some winter camping shows I wanna watch.
Good.
Oh, my God.
I'm going this weekend, by the way, if anybody wants to go.
Yeah, good for you.
Busy.
Have fun.
All set. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye, backyard.
All right, so we're gonna stay on page 21 and work our way through municipal support, with the exception of those that are coming tomorrow. We've talked about Historical Society, McGonagall Watershed Association coming tomorrow. Rosie did cemeteries, libraries coming tomorrow, Memorial Day, Rosie did, general assistance, Kayla did. Moderator, we pay the moderators of town meeting. If they wish to be, some people volunteer that service and some wish to get paid. We pay them a nominal stipend of $75 for moderating a town meeting. We budget for that. Ballot clerks, we have some ballot clerks that work elections that are paid, and some that volunteer their time. They're paid minimum wage if they come, and we track their hours. There's an increase being proposed this year. This year we'll have a primary election in June, and then the gubernatorial election in November. And we're probably gonna need more ballot clerks on hand just to help the process and get us through, and it does seem that more wish to be paid as time goes on, so. Registrar of Voters, one of the ladies that works in the office is also the Registrar of Voters, is part of her job. We have to budget a little bit of money to do the various things that the Registrar of Voters does in terms of registration cards and mailings and whatnot. LIA building is not ours anymore, as you know. We transferred ownership of that last year, or 2020, yes, actually. And Main Housing, Susan on the hot seat now.
Can I stay here? Did you want me to go look for?
Why don't you come sit here so you can use the microphone if you don't mind?
Sure.
Or you could pull that one in front of you if you want, but you wouldn't be seen on TV.
Okay. Oh, right. Oh, this is being televised.
Oh, yes. Televised, live streamed, recorded for posterity. So this is Susan Silverio. Susan is the chair of the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee, which she's gonna talk about second. But first, as I alluded to in the opening remarks, the town is the recipient of some funds by the American Rescue Plan Act money. We've sent out to our various board chairs, department heads, requests for possible uses of this money, and Susan responded. And so we put it in the budget, and she's here to explain that request and what the money might be used for, or would be used for, not might, would be.
Thank you,
You're
Dave.
welcome.
As part of our review of the current comprehensive plan, one chapter is affordable housing. There's no longer an affordable housing committee in the town, but that's been, as I have spoken to you before, a particular interest of mine, so I've had the opportunity to do some research. There have been a lot of webinars available from the Regional Planning Commission, by the Maine Municipal Association, and Maine State Housing Authority. So it's come to my attention that there is support right now for some initiatives to address the situation, which is, as you probably know, the cost of rental and home ownership has gone up significantly. Some people say 25% increase in the cost of purchasing a home, and rentals also have gone up. So I have a long time interest. I was a founder and an executive director of Hospitality House. Now that's been taken over by a larger organization, and there's 26 women and children every night there, but that's just a shelter. And so my goal here is to prevent people in our town being displaced by these increasing costs, particularly people with disabilities or lower incomes or fixed incomes who may not no longer be able to afford to live in Lincolnville. So I'm proposing that we as a town collaborate with Main State Housing Authority, owners of property, developers, and private and nonprofit organizations. I've started these conversations with several of owners and developer, so we can utilize the tax incentive program. My initial study of that, and you may be more familiar than I am, but it benefits the town as well as makes it possible for a developer to put in something that doesn't impact the town. There are some extra monies that can offset additional costs. If somebody were to put in a multifamily rental, long-term rental, for example. So the other possibility, which I find very interesting, is to collaborate in the newly formed Mid-Coast Housing Trust that's being initiated by the Camden Rotary Club. And the Housing Trust would allow property to be donated to the trust. So rather than developing a property that could be turned over shortly after that for the highest market value, it would guarantee that the land would be held by this trust for the whole Mid-Coast area. And one possibility to consider, to explore, would be to, if there are properties in town that are taken for lack of tax payment, something like a property like that could be placed into a trust so it would be forever affordable. So that's still being developed, but it's an interesting, exciting possibility. So I thought it wouldn't hurt to start this conversation by asking for a very small amount of money, really. But one of the things I've learned in the webinars is that if there's some commitment on the part of the town, that can leverage funds from the state, which are coming through the state now, so that someone could either renovate or build affordable housing. And when we're saying affordable now, we really mean workforce housing. So all the people who are working at minimum wage, who are working perhaps in this area, but this also includes school teachers and firefighters who perhaps can no longer afford to live in our area. So I'd like to just start this conversation. How would we use the money? Well, there could be costs that might be involved in placing a land in a housing trust. That could be back taxes, I don't know. Again, this money could leverage state funds. It might also apply for administration. If somebody in the office was having to do extra work to help make this happen, it possibly could go for that. So there's a lot of possibilities. But I thought it would be something to begin to get the ball rolling.
So Susan, from all the research you've done, do you think 10 grand is enough for leveraging purposes? Because
probably not.
I mean, it's kind of a pay-to-play situation you've got, right? And so do you think $10 or $10,000 will get you in the door?
It's getting in the door. It's starting that conversation, saying that we have some commitment on the part of our town to see that something could happen, and to explore. I don't have a grand scheme to present yet, but I thought there's so much potential right now and so much will, political will on the part of the state, that if we show just a little bit of interest on the part of our town, we might be able to have something happen. We haven't had any subsidized housing in town since 1992. My husband, Jack Silveri, designed the Lincolnville Village apartments that are on Heel Road. They're beautifully maintained, beautifully managed, and are serving 8 families. So, something like that might be possible. We don't want to encourage urban sprawl. We'd like to see, possibly some long-term rental clustered in an area where it wouldn't have a big impact on Route 1 or any of the arteries, really.
So, I mean, affordable housing is very, very important to me, but I'm also wary and cautious about sometimes how it's being applied, such as tax abatements to people who are making large subdivisions where it's really just kind of like a token thing where they say they're gonna make affordable housing, but it's really a very small percentage of the project. Who would be managing these funds, and is it primarily for putting land in a trust for affordable housing, or is there a myriad of options that we would be looking at, such as maybe, I mean, you know, incentives for people to maybe discontinue doing short-term rentals in favor of turning that back into long-term rentals, or I guess I would just, and who would be in control of making these decisions?
Well, that's a good question. We don't have an affordable housing committee at this moment. So it could possibly be a task force that was committed to see something happen. It's, the percentage is 30%. So if someone is building something and they can guarantee that 30% of those units would be available to people of lower incomes, they can be eligible for tax incentives. So it has to make sense for a developer to do something like this, because we're not creating a charity. But what I like about the housing trust is it couldn't be turned over shortly after that and
Be developed for other purposes.
And sold. So there's a lot more research to do and to have a very specific project, but I thought it would be, just wanted to open up the conversation. And possibly a task force would be required, a task force of some kind.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you're requesting this using ARPA funds,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not the typical budget process.
Right.
Okay.
Right, so David just asked me tonight to pop in and present this because this is the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Yeah, what we've done is any requests that we've received back from our response out to people, we've put in the budget. And when we talk about revenues and offsets tomorrow, there's a line that says ARPA. And, you know, that we can, I don't mean to pick on this one, there are other requests within the budget that are identified as possibly ARPA fund eligible.
Okay.
And we may choose to not do it at all, we might choose to fund it locally without ARPA funds, or we might choose to fund it with ARPA. This certainly could be something that the town could fund, self-fund versus American Rescue Plan Act money, so.
Susan, so let's say the voters decide to use the ARPA funds for this initial 10,000. Do you have a concept for a program like this carrying costs for Lincolnville going into the future, of, you know, what the average annual contribution for a municipality for a program like this would be?
Ideally, none.
Okay.
That would be my goal.
Great answer.
And this is gives us until 2026, at the end of 2026. I think something could happen in that period of time. It might not take any money at all. It might be a developer, a home, property owner, and leveraging the funds that are clearly available through Mason Housing Authority. It might not take any money at all. But I just wanted to toss this out, just as much to build awareness and have some tiny bit of political will, you know, from the town of Lincolnville.
Yeah, great, thank you for that.
Well, I've got a question, Susan, and the only question I have for you is, who do you see, you mentioned a task force in lieu of the Affordable Housing Committee, administering funds, should the taxpayers decide to do the 10,000? Who would have access to that money, I guess, if it needed to be spent?
If this is government money, it wouldn't be me, it wouldn't be the committee, it would be someone in the town office, which as I say, that, part of that 10,000 could, you know, maybe need to offset some of their costs.
Okay. Thanks.
If there are no further questions at this time regarding that request, we're going to flip to page 19 under boards and committees. And as I think I said earlier, Susan is the chair of our comprehensive plan review committee. They've requested some funding, which is detailed actually on page 20. Page 19 just has a summary of the dollars requested. And I think this page 20 is Susan's work or the committee's work. And maybe we'll turn it back to you, Susan, to explain what you utilize the funds.
Maybe I'll just go through this in case you haven't had a chance to study it closely.
They haven't. They just got it tonight, so.
So I'll just kind of walk you through this. So the committee was formed in June. Am I yelling or is this, I'm talking really loud here, is this okay?
No, it's good.
Oh, you're perfect.
Okay. The committee was formed in June. And so our goal that we've been commissioned to is to update the 2006 comprehensive plan, consistent with state guidelines, so that there's a shared vision for both protection and growth, responsible development, so that the town also is eligible for funding for various projects that are supported by this legal document, which is the comprehensive plan. So one thing that the committee is completely unanimous on is that, like the comprehensive plans in the past, we need a consultant to help us with the analysis of the trends and the data that we're going to be receiving this spring, to analyze and do the technical writing and make sure that it's consistent with the state guidelines. So I talked to two consulting groups. The Musson Group, for example, has worked with Belfast and Rockland recently. They could do the data analysis 3 to 6 months, present key findings. They have the GIS, that's the Geographic Info System, all the mapping, which includes all the new maps and including all the new land that's preserved and conserved. So then they would meet with the committee for facilitated conversations, open work sessions, which would be open to the public. And then they would create with us concise goals, and they would bullet it. It might be less wordy than the previous comprehensive plan. They're much more direct these days in their communications. The timing, they said they could do this in 12 to 18 months. The outcome would be a fast, efficient, professional product. I spoke with North Star Planning also, and they've done smaller towns like us, more like us perhaps, Bray and Lisbon, and they are very similar to the Musson Group. They advise that we avoid the data trap and focus on vision, trends, values, obtainable goals, and communication. So the cost to guide us through this entire project by one of these consulting firms would be $80 to $1,000, and that could be divided into 2 fiscal years. So I have, of course, asked the question, could we hire you part-time, and what could we do to how much of this work we do ourselves? So they said, well, we could do our own vision statement, and I'll talk about that later. We could do the data chapters ourselves. We'll be getting that data from the state. I've requested that information. The DOT can support the transportation chapter, and we're going to be helped with by the Lincoln County Planning Commission for that. For example, sidewalks in the center. Then this consulting company would review it. They would do technical writing, particularly land use, which supports all the ordinances. Timing is question mark, cost is question mark, outcome will be much slower, and it might still cost us $70,000 to $80,000 divided into 2 fiscal years. So in whatever we do, we need a vision, and there's not really much of one in the current plan. We could go back to the 20-year-old group work that was done and rewrite that ourselves, I suppose. We could have our consultants that we hire, do an online survey, do an open house for presentation. They would facilitate a meeting. The other option is, as I've presented to the select board before, is to work with a process called Community Heart and Soul. And this is a 2-year process. And the thing about Community Heart and Soul process is it's resident driven. So it would be people in our own town who would be coordinating and working with this process to engage everyone possible, to focus on what matters the most, and then long-term implementation. That's not just the town, that's also the businesses and the other community organizations. And somehow, though, if there's a clearly articulated many projects, possibly, there could be renewed interest for volunteers and leadership to work in the long run for these, and possibly start bringing some life back into some of our committees that we need, like the Land Use Committee. So the other possibility so that would be the outcome. The outcome of the Community Heart and Soul process would be a shared vision, wide community engagement, increased volunteerism, and positive action for the future, both nonprofit and municipal. And there's one more possibility here, and that is that there would be a planner or development director hired by the town, like other towns do, possibly shared with neighboring towns, and that person would guide the ongoing updates of the plan and implement vision and goals with available grants. That actually was listed in the 2006 comp plan, so it's not my idea. That was actually something that's been talked about for a long time. So we do have a recommendation, our committee. We would like to recommend that this allocation of $50,000 that be annualized over 2 years, that means $50,000 each year for 2 years. The committee and our town would issue a request for proposals from consultant groups and simultaneously begin a Community Heart and Soul process to include all townspeople. So at the end of 18 months to 2 years, at the end of 18 months, I have a whole time frame worked out. At the end of 18 months, the town would have a comprehensive plan that they could rely upon, and the Heart and Soul process would continue to, rather than just be a document on the shelf that might be consulted by the planning board, it would engage the whole town and possibly having some vision for our future as a community.
Help me out, if you could. You mentioned the possible planner. How, again, would that work in with the plan that you just kind of outlined?
Well, it wouldn't work very quickly. I mean, clearly, to hire somebody, it takes quite a bit of time. But that's just, I'm putting that out there, just as that's how some towns do this.
Well, and unless I misunderstood, that was once a comprehensive plan is put into place, we would hire someone to help us to keep that current every 2 years, or was that, did I not understand that
That's
correctly?
one possibility.
Okay.
We're not actually recommending that.
Yep.
The way that this committee is commissioned is to revise it every year. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but this takes some technical writing and some analysis of data, and there are people who do this professionally, and then there are the rest of us concerned citizens.
How much did the last comprehensive plan cost?
I haven't been able to determine that.
And wasn't it the case that I'm just guessing, speculating, you guys know, wasn't it the case in the last comprehensive plan, you had basically on call a professional technical writer?
Kim Vogel
Yes.
did a magnificent job,
Right.
and there also was a planning commission that was available to, and Jean LaFleur was that consultant who led the town through many meetings and sherbet gatherings. So we don't have some of those resources anymore.
Mhm.
So, but still, it's, the town is being asked to revise this every 10 years.
David, can you recall how much the visual resource assessment cost? I can't.
I can't either.
Could you dig that number up?
Yep.
Just, I'm just curious, it's not in the dusty recesses of my brain any longer.
16 years plus is a good amount of time.
Yeah,
To
the
help
visual,
wash some things away, you know?
the visual resource assessment, when I was on the comp plan, that was 2008? 2009, something like
That
that?
was a spin-off of the
Yeah.
2006.
Yeah.
It's in
Yeah,
the
I'm just
contract.
curious, just
Yeah.
for comparative purposes,
Yep.
the efforts made by the,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Other questions for Susan on this concept?
Oh, I guess one more, I just wanna be clear, this, the $50,000, request, it's not part of an ARPA, it's not an ARPA
Yeah.
money request, right? Yeah.
I think this would be a town expense. And I honestly don't know how this has worked in the past, or, you know, but this seems to be, as near as we can tell, what the cost is now.
Well, I'll follow up with, have you looked into and discounted ARPA funds?
I've looked at the list of qualifying,
Mm-hmm.
things, and I didn't see anything that resembled that.
Okay, thanks.
It's not COVID related.
Yeah, I know. Well, it didn't hurt to ask, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why I looked.
And quickly, Susan, did these consultants that you spoke with indicate that the time frame that they have projected seems to be the average approach in terms of turnaround time for a project like this?
That seems to be how they work.
Okay, great,
Mhm.
thank you.
And then, you know, when we help, we volunteer to help them, I know some builders will charge you more.
Yeah. I don't see anyone jumping up and down anymore. Thank you for that comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.
That was great, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Susan. And we've already done municipal support remainder, and the last thing that we had on the schedule for tonight were the provider agency requests, which are on page 23. Although Kayla's listed as talking, I'm gonna talk a little bit first. Provider agencies, per the charter, get recommendations by the budget committee and then come to the selectmen. It's kind of the process, I won't say the reverse, but different process. So the budget committee hasn't met to review those requests as yet. So there isn't necessarily an awful lot of information that can be offered beyond what's listed here for dollars and cents. Unless somebody has some questions, comments, or concerns.
Before we get going on any of those, I know, was all the required paperwork submitted on time from each individual provider agency that would qualify them to be on this list?
Yes, the budget committee, I believe it was last year, the year before, said we don't wanna see anything that hasn't met the requirement. So the only ones that are listed are the ones that met the requirement.
Perfect.
American Red Cross called me and said, I can't do a petition, so we're not making a request. Camden Area District Nursing didn't get theirs in by the time frame, called me, said, oops, we missed the deadline, and Spectrum Generations, they called and asked when they were gonna get their funding, and I said I didn't get a request, so
Oh, geez.
I'm not quite sure what happened with them. So these ones that are listed are the ones that,
It's unfortunate about the American Red Cross and the Camden Area District Nursing, those are two very important organizations for this area. But it is what it is.
and,
I'm a Red Crosser that works with these people, and I don't wanna get into that part of it. But I came up with an idea. I went to the persons in charge of this chapter for this area, and the next time I'm going to go to a different way, because Red Cross has set up the whole foundation of how they put themselves together now, and it's a 3-state kind of thing, and I think I could find somebody that, in the future, that would be willing to take the time to fill out the forms. So that's my goal with them.
Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah, because, I mean, there's a lot of need for Red Cross money.
Sure.
I have to say, it embarrasses me to think that, but people can be what they are.
and the only new request we have this year is the Waldo County Pet Food Pantry. And they did do their petition and submitted their application, so.
She didn't?
She did.
Oh, I thought you said she didn't.
No, she did.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, wait a minute, I thought she had.
No, she did it.
Yeah.
Do we know if the Lifelight reduction was just because they asked for less?
Lifelight asks for $750
We
every
usually
year.
top that up a little bit,
The budget committee has always recommended the 1,000 because
Yeah.
they think the organization is worthy.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens this year when they talk about it.
Do you know how long the Waldo County Pet Food Pantry has been in existence?
I don't, I'm pretty sure it will be in the paperwork, and I can add that when we go. It's actually, Heidi Blood was the one that submitted the paperwork for that.
Oh, great.
So, but we can get how long they've been in business, but we do have that in our packet.
Who submitted it?
Heidi Blood.
Oh, yeah,
Who's our animal control officer?
yeah, I know.
Along with a lot of other
I
things,
didn't
animal
hear the first
related.
name, I'm thinking, no, I know the person who does that, so, yeah.
So unless somebody has any other questions, that really concludes the rapid fire, what we'd hoped to accomplish this evening. We'll be back at it again tomorrow at 6 o'clock, back here for anybody that can make it. You have the schedule. Certainly, we did go through this quickly. If somebody has some questions that pop to you in the middle of the night, like they do to me, we're here and available. If we don't have the answer, we'll find it and get it back to you. And again, the goal for tonight and tomorrow is to hear all the requests, and then the selectmen will begin deliberations at their next meeting. And hopefully in March, we'll make their recommendations as to what move forward, because the budget committee will have a presentation of that for town charter in March, so.
Anything else from the board?
No.
Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded, any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
Susan, do you have a minute before you?